Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate your time. My name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Matrix. I want to let you know that this webinar is recorded, and I will share the recording with everyone afterwards. And then also in the chat section, there's a place for you to send any questions or comments. If there's any questions whatsoever, please share them there, and I'd be happy to address them after my demo and presentation. With that, let's dive into the presentation here. Today's goal is to help you understand the basics of Matrix. The second is to help you become more effective at prioritizing your task, project, and emails, and then help you envision what your work and life success may look like with Matrix. And then, of course, the most important thing is to get 20% of the features in the software that will give you 80% of the benefits, because I think that is the most important thing I can do today, which is to help you get started real fast, real easily. And then lastly, provide you some tips and tricks to help you prioritize better, starting right now. Over the past decade, I've talked to thousands of customers. I've seen almost every single possible use case of our software. And so with that, I do want to bring any experience that I have to help you become more effective and more productive. And that is why the question and answer is always something that's very, very effective, especially if you have very specific needs. The goal of the webinar really is to get you going. And so I hope that as you listen to this webinar, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, okay, how can I apply this right now to my personal work, and then also to your team and also to your organization? Because if you walk away from today's webinar and you actually get excited and enthusiastic about prioritizing your tasks, then I know that I've done my job. So why do we even prioritize? Of course, everyone that's here today in this webinar, and also to everyone that's listening to this afterwards, I know that all of you are already people who are on top of your work, right? That's the most fascinating thing. I think the people who are proactive in learning how to prioritize or looking for software like ours are already at the top of the world with respect to being able to be in control of everything that you have to do. Yet at the same time, we are subjected to so many areas of responsibility, so many things that we're trying to juggle at the same time. I speak to this, somewhat from my own experience, which is I have so many things on my plate at any point in time. And unfortunately, there's only one of me. And unfortunately, there's only so many hours in the day, regardless of how much coffee I drink. Therefore, I have to think about where can I spend my time to be most effective. And sometimes doing less is more if you're working on the right things. So being able to keep track on the status of work across so many of these different projects is very critical. And then second is to create alignment across team members. I think the best analogy I can come up with is rowing the boat. Imagine, if on your team of 5 or 10 people, half the people are going back, half the people are going forward, you're not going to get anywhere. And so being able to create that alignment so then everyone is rowing forward or in one direction, and then being able to go. And here's the cool thing, which is it doesn't matter how hard they row, right? Going in the right direction is actually more important than the strength of each individual. And so when we think about alignment across a team, it's really about ensuring that everyone understands what everyone's priorities are. And so how do we make sure that we communicate properly? These are the things we need to work on and the reason why for that. And so Matrix is really important in creating that alignment. And then the third aspect of that is to take back control of emails and meetings, more so than ever before. We just have so many meetings. And to be honest, I've had meetings where it's half an hour or an hour, and it should have been 5 minutes because it's that simple. In fact, not even have those meetings at all. And then secondly, emails. I get a couple of hundred emails per day. Vast majority of it is not that important. And so being able to triage those emails and be able to understand what email should I be responding to, and then ensuring that I actually respond to important emails that may have been from the past. And so being able to prioritize my email, creating reminders and so forth is so crucial to be on top of everything that I have to do. And then what happens when you don't prioritize? And I think that's something that we also got to be cognizant about, because the easiest thing is to do nothing, right? So of course, again, all of you here today, you're listening to this, and then after this call, let's say you don't do a single thing, as in you don't apply Matrix, you don't use the software, you go back to the status quo. And what happens then? And I think, the three recurring problems that I hear over and over again is that you start to lose sight on what's important and you work on the wrong things. And that's because, again, all of us have so many things on our plate. You feel busy, but you're not meeting your goals. And again, I'm subjected to this. This happened to me multiple times, despite me, being proactive about it. And then lastly, being overwhelmed by just emails and meetings in general. So what is Matrix? Our software is a comprehensive email, priority, and project management software that helps at 3 levels. At the individual level, which is for every single one of us, this should apply. It helps us prioritize our most important tasks and emails. All it really does is actually visualizing the stuff that we have to do and ensuring that we actually putting our effort into the most important tasks every day. At the team level, it's making sure that you understand what everyone's priorities are. And likewise, that your manager and your direct reports and your coworkers and your clients and all the people that you work with are on the same page. At the organization level, what happens is that Matrix create a single source of truth. And what that means is that imagine being able to understand not just your priorities within your department, within your org, but your particular group, but also the priorities of all the people around you, or also being able to understand the priorities of your clients and having one central place to know exactly where everyone is going and sort of like the goalposts or the direction of the entire organization as a whole. And then lastly, be able to have a record of all those changes, the change in prioritization, the change in due dates, and so forth. And that's how Matrix helps across all 3 levels. So what makes Matrix better? It's the only solution that's Microsoft 365 security certified for the web app, Teams app, and Outlook app. We're probably one of the most integrated solution into the Microsoft Teams ecosystem. And so if you use Microsoft Teams, Outlook, or you use Microsoft single sign-on. And then also, of course, if you've heard of something called Microsoft Copilot, which is an AI enhanced system where instead of actually just interact and putting input into your data and working with application, you're actually interacting with a chatbot that is highly intelligent, able to interact with Matrix. And so we actually have integrations across the board. It's something that I'm really excited about just because I think there's so much more potential for all of us to be more effective and more productive and having something that's proactive in helping us prioritize better. Matrix also focuses very strongly on prioritization. Unlike a lot of other project management software, which is actually just focused on projects, we think that prioritization should be front and center every step of the way. Being able to decide on what to work on correctly is more important than just doing work for the sake of doing work. Fourthly, providing what's called people-centered collaboration, being able to understand what it is that you need to work on for any single person, another colleague as an example. And then lastly, Matrix is available as a SaaS solution, which is just a software solution. But for healthcare and life sciences, we have the HIPAA compliant version. And then for state and local government, we have the Azure Gov Cloud. So if you're interested in our other enterprise offerings, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to explain to customers how we can actually benefit your organization for those other options. So what makes Matrix effective is just pretty much 4 things. 1, it helps you understand what you need to work on now, what you need to work on later, what you should delegate, and then providing one central place where everyone can go to know what needs to be done. And that's pretty much it. And so it's a communication tool, for lack of a better word, just being able to take all that stuff out of your brain and be able to project it in a way where others can actually see it and visualize where you're spending your time. And then likewise, be able to see what everyone else is working on. So let's talk about the fundamental of Matrix. So there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." Now, I bring this quote up all the time because I think it talks about the challenges that we face every single day, which is we are bombarded with things that are urgent but not important. And let me give you an example. When I wake up in the morning, first thing I do for work is I check my emails. And guess what? Overnight I get a few dozen emails from all sorts of sources. And the vast majority of them aren't that important. And my most important email, I guarantee you, is buried somewhere, four scrolls down. And if I'm always just looking at the most urgent things, which is the last thing in, and if I only respond to those emails, I will miss out on my most important things. And likewise, this happens to all the things that we work on with respect to tasks, and deliverables as well. Imagine, I'm pretty sure you'll see this today in your work, which is, you're sitting down, you're working on something important, and suddenly you get an email or a ping from your manager or your client asking about something and say, hey, can you do this for me real quick? Right? Real quick. That's the magic word that takes you off your track and brings you down a path that is completely unproductive, because that real quick actually derails you completely. And that's the urgent things. Those are the urgent things that actually may not be the most important thing that we can work on at any point in time. So the idea then is, how do we actually track all these tasks that we have from the perspective of importance and urgency? And that's the key. So there's something called the Eisenhower Matrix, and it's a very simple, powerful framework to actually take all the things that we have to do and split it into 4 quadrants based on the dimensions of importance and urgency. And what it does, it helps you prioritize tasks and make the most out of your time. So let me show you how it may work in practice. Imagine the following. Take out a piece of paper, write down all the things you have to do. And the question I have for you would be, imagine you write down 10 or 15 things or something like that. Where do you start? If you were to work on one thing, where do you start? Do you start at the top of the list, or do you start at the bottom of the list, right? And then if you have to add something to that list, do you add at the top of the list or bottom of the list? And as you can see here, that simple exercise shows you that if we just have a task list, it is so ineffective, because it's easier for our brain just to work from something at the top and something at the bottom. So instead, if you take those 15 or 16 things and you split it into 4 quadrants, 4 buckets, the do now, which is the important and urgent. These are the tasks that you have to execute on. If there's any waking moment that you're not, firefighting, for lack of better words, this is where you should be spending your effort. And then quadrant 2, the important and not urgent. And so it's actually really interesting, because if you're done with the important and urgent task, you shouldn't be working on the urgent but not important. You should be working on the important but not urgent. And so that's where you should be spending your effort to plan for the things that will be urgent next, as the important things that will be urgent next, right? And so that's the plan quadrant. And so after that, you have the things that are urgent but not important, and perhaps that's something you could delegate to others. And that's why we have assistants. That's why we have third party for that we can delegate to. And then lastly, you should not have anything that's not important and not urgent. Just having that on your list pollutes everything that you have to do. And so therefore, instead of having the not important and not urgent, you have what's called the inbox, which is just a place for you to write down your idea so you can actually decide on where it fits within the bigger picture. So now, instead of having a task list, you have a matrix. And within this matrix, it should be very easy for you to see where you should be spending your time. Now, here's the thing. If you took that entire list and you put everything in quadrant 1, then you've done yourself a disservice, right? If everything's important and urgent, then nothing is. And so when you think about this particular exercise, you're making a very, very hard decision on prioritizing your task. Now, here's where the magic happens. You ask your entire team to do the exact same thing. This exact same exercise. You ask your manager to do this exercise. You ask your direct report to do this exercise. You ask your most important coworkers, the ones that you interact with, to do this exercise. And then you get together and you compare notes. And imagine being able to share this matrix, show it to your manager and say, hey, by the way, these are the things I consider to be important and urgent. Do you agree? And then likewise, be able to see what your manager considers important and urgent. Do you agree? And the funny thing is, we spend so much time and effort working on things, but sometimes we don't spend enough time thinking whether or not it was the right thing to work on. And in my opinion, the worst thing you could do is to spend so much time and effort to do something that ends up being not cherished at all, for lack of better words. Imagine working on a report, spending so much time and effort on a report that no one reads, right? or working on a product feature that no customers care about. And it's something that we struggle with, and it's something that everyone struggle with. And so being able to create that alignment early on is so crucial. So the 4-quadrant Eisenhower Matrix create alignment because it forces you to prioritize from the very beginning. You don't go and push that task back. I want you to make that decision right now on what are the things you think are important and urgent. And then here's the thing: if you disagree, you can reprioritize at that moment, right? And so it's not about doing it right the first time. It's a dynamic state where you're constantly reprioritizing, but you're always on the same page. So it's better for you and your manager to actually be on the same page, and maybe in a week or two you reprioritize as needed, but that alignment happens right now. And here's the cool part, which is success from using Matrix isn't about finding what everyone agrees on. It's discovering disagreements on what should be a priority when it isn't, and be able to surface up that very high priority task, your management, that you didn't realize was high priority, so then you can actually work on that. That is magical. So a couple of key ideas. One, if everything is important and urgent, then nothing's important and urgent. Keep that in mind. You should not have more than 25% of your tasks in quadrant 1. If you do, that's too much. Reprioritize or break them down. 2, use Matrix to sync up on goals with team members. So instead of looking at it as just one matrix of all the tasks you have to do, break up the matrices into different types of tasks for different projects or for goals or initiatives. And so when you look at something like Matrix software, what it does is it actually helps you break down all these different things, all these different initiatives that you have, and then you have the priorities within each of those, and it may be with different stakeholders. You might have a project with one team, you might have another project with another team, you might have a project with your manager or with your clients, your external clients, et cetera. But having all these different priorities come together into one central place. And then thirdly, regularly reassess and adjust your strategy based on result. If you use Matrix and then you're finding that you're still not working on the most important and most urgent task, or you realize that for some reason you're not meeting your goals, then maybe those priorities weren't done correctly, right? It's up to you, honestly, to really figure out how can you better spend your time and effort. And then lastly, create a project called Team Priorities and project that onto the big screen. What I mean by that is when you're in your team meeting, just open up Matrix, show it on your screen, and then have your discussion be based around all those priorities that you have. Because if you're doing it correctly, then you should be spending your time talking about the things in quadrant 1 and then quadrant 2. I do want to mention that this webinar and other webinars are on our website, affluence.com/webinars. And so, there are other topics that we cover, such as email management or templates and so forth. So if you're interested in some of these other more advanced topics, make sure you check out the other webinars. And then with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the product here and show you how to put this into practice. Okay, you should be able to see my screen now, and I have Matrix open up. And as you can see, one of the things I want you to notice first is that front and center is the 4 quadrants, right? Again, as I mentioned, our software, Matrix, is based on the core fundamentals of the 4 quadrants and using that to better visualize the things that you have to do. It's not about the task list. The point is to make it where you have to make those hard decisions of saying, hey, this is where I should be spending my time and effort. On my left-hand side here, I have a list of projects. As I mentioned, you don't have to have just one matrix. The idea is you might have a personal priorities, right? And so these are the things that is just for you. These are your priorities that you might have for this month or this quarter or this year. For me personally, I have a project of all the things I want to accomplish and inside and outside of work. And then within that, I can take a look and say, okay, you know what? This is where I should be spending my effort. If I have any extra time, this is where I'm going to focus my time. And then you might have a project called Team Priorities. This is where you have your coworkers, your direct coworkers on there. And then you might have one which is your manager, for example. And then one of the other things that I also like is actually having a project for my goals for the year. So I have a project for goals for 2024. And one thing you'll notice is that instead of actually using the do now, do later format, I changed the quadrant names to long-term goals, short-term goals, and then anti-goals and a sort of catch-all. It's just a way for me to reflect on the things I have to work on at any point in time. One of the things you'll notice sort of right away is Protomatrix is a very flexible software. The Eisenhower Matrix is a way for us to think about the task, but at the end of the day, the 4 quadrants is just a way for us to break everything that we have to do into different dimensions, right? And so instead of just thinking about importance and urgency, we might think about the dimensions of impact, like what tasks have the most impact with the least effort. Those are the things where you should be spending your time on, right? Those are the low-hanging fruit. So when you think about Protomatrix, you should sort of step back and visualize, how can I use this system of thinking for everything that I have to do for my own work, but also for the entire organization? So now let's just say I want to create a task. How does that work? So you see how I can select a project here, and then from this project, when I hover over every quadrant, I can actually choose add item. I'll go ahead and click add item here. I'm going to say follow up with webinar participants. So this is it's just a very, very simple task that I have. But instead of actually just typing out the task name, I'm going to go ahead and say due tomorrow at 2 p.m. So Matrix uses natural language. And what happens is the fact that I say due tomorrow at 2 p.m., our system will interpret that and then set the due date for me automatically. Once I created this task, on the right-hand side, it's called the item details. So the way the item details works is it allows me to add additional information around the task itself. As you can see, there's a lot of things that I can add to a task. For example, I can change the owner, I can set progress, effort, reminders, due dates, I can have notes, and then resources. And resources might include things like files or documents, etc. But let me focus on the most important features that I think you should use. One, due dates. You should always use due dates. Here's the thing. If you want to think about what tasks are urgent, right? If you want to have that understanding, then you have to set due dates. Because if we don't set due dates, then that will not come back up when we think about how we're spending our time, when we're allocating our time and resources. Because everything that we do requires time, right? And so in my opinion, everything that's important has to have a due date. Now you can change the due date, that's okay. But having a due date puts something tangible to it. And then the second part is reminders. And there's a big difference between due dates and reminders. Let's just say if you have to work on a very big project, and that big project will take you multiple days of work. And so we set a due date for it and, due next week or something like that. And now that, next Friday comes and you're thinking, wait a minute, I can't get this done. It's going to take me days. So the idea of reminders is actually to remind you to think about it, to get started ahead of time. So for me, for example, I'm going to say remind me daily down here. So again, I used our natural language system. I typed in remind me daily. Now Matrix would send me a daily reminder for this task, which is due tomorrow at 2 p.m. My local time, and it will send me a daily reminder until I get this done. So why do I recommend reminders? It's a way to trick your brain. As I mentioned earlier, you know how when I check my email, it's the last email in is like sort of the first email you respond to, right? Last in, first out. You've heard that mentality. Now, what happens is by setting these recurring reminders, what it's doing is it's surfacing up those most important tasks to me over and over again. So on a daily basis, I will get these recurring reminders on everything that's truly important to me to ensure that I actually get it done. So when I follow up with a customer, for example, what I would do is I would create a task and then I would say due in 1 month and remind me monthly. And say in 1 month I forget or whatever, I'm busy, that's okay. I'll get a reminder, I'll get a due date notification, but then the next month after that, I'll get a notification again. And now that task is overdue. And it asks me to actually go and readjust my priorities. Do I still need to follow up, etc. So I want you to leverage the same trick when you create tasks in Matrix. Set those due dates, set those reminders, so then the system will go and ensure that you actually will work on those things. What happens is, we spend so much time and effort thinking about the things we have to do, and then we tend to forget it. And that is why, by the way, people miss their goals. So if you think about, goal setting, right? When you started this year, you probably had a couple of goals in the back of your mind for 2024. But if you just wrote down those goals one time, guess what happened? That was fresh in your mind for a day or two, but then a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, 10,000 other things have entered your mind, and now that you forget to work on those goals. So for me, when I create a goal in Matrix, I set that monthly reminder, and so it comes back and it's fresh, and it is so powerful, and it works for me, and it works so well that I think everyone should use the recurring reminder system in Matrix. If you want to set recurring reminders, again, you can click on this button here, set those recurring reminders, or you can just simply type remind me weekly, remind me monthly, or remind me in 3 days or something like that if you want a one-time reminder. So that's an item in the item details here. There's a couple of other things that I think are actually pretty useful. The first is a star. So if you star a task, what it does is it pushes to the top of the quadrant. So there's only so many projects and so many tasks we can work on at any point in time. So what I do is I would star specific projects. So I would star 5 to 10 projects because in my work account, I have more than 300 projects. And as you can imagine, that's a lot to go through. And I'm not going to click through every project to find out what I need to work on. So I have 5 to 10 projects that are active projects that I considered my most important projects. So I would star those projects. And then within those projects, I have tasks that I would star. And again, I would star something between 5 to 15 tasks. And what it does is it pushes to the top of every quadrant that I have. And from that, I can actually see, okay, I need to work on this because I can actually generate reports around all my star tasks, and it makes it a lot easier for me to keep track of them. So I do like starring. And again, this is a feature where it becomes more powerful as you use Matrix more, because if you have 5 items, starring doesn't make any difference, right? But if you have 500 items, starring will actually become a lot more effective. Right below that, you actually have the ability to add icons. Now, in my opinion, the icons aren't super useful, except for a few scenarios. And it's more about visualizing the type of task that you have. One of the areas that I've seen a lot of success from customers is actually using the color coding here, red, yellow, and green, just as a way to visualize, whether or not something is on schedule or not. And as you can see here, after I add the green color here, when I look at my quadrant, if I have a lot of different tasks, I can see the category that it's in. So as I mentioned down here, further, one of the things I can do is I can assign a task to a coworker. And this is actually very useful in a team environment. So if you don't plan to use Matrix in a team environment, then obviously this doesn't matter. But in your team project, where you might have your coworkers, your direct reports, or your colleagues, being able to assign it to people is actually very, very useful. Now, there can only be one owner for a task, and that's on purpose. If you think about prioritization, you got to think about accountability. And when you have multiple owners, accountability starts going away real fast, because I was like, oh, I thought you were responsible for it, right? So the way it works in Matrix, there can only be one owner, but there can be followers. And so followers are people who are relevant to the task. Maybe they want to be updated, or they do chime in and they do add results and update the progress and so forth. But what happens is you have one owner, so then that person's avatar shows up on all the items, and it shows you exactly who's responsible for it. Down in the chat section, you saw how I actually typed in the remind me daily, but also this serves as a place to communicate. So what that means is you can actually have multiple people talk to each other within this particular task itself. Now, let me explain why it's useful. I imagine that, if you use Microsoft Teams or Slack or just emails or any chat software, you're probably sending messages back and forth all the time around 10 different things that's going on, right? The problem with that is that later on, if you need to review what you discuss around specific tasks, it's virtually impossible. And not only that, all those conversations might just be with one person. And so now you have a communication that is actually siloed, and no one else can actually look into that if needed. So the way it works in Matrix is that if you look at this chat, it's task specific. So what that means is that might have a conversation here, and then 6 months later, you can go back to this conversation and see exactly what everyone talked about, and also what due dates were set, because we actually track and have a record of all the changes that's been made to this particular task. So if you have a colleague maybe is on leave, and maybe on parental leave or something like that, and they were working on a very important task, and now someone else needs to take over, and the first question is, okay, why did we make this decision? What's the due date? What's been discussed? You can open up Matrix, go to that task and see that entire history going back to months or years as needed. And so when a new person comes in and they take over a task, they have all the context that's necessary. I think this is one of those things where people don't do enough of realizing that these records are actually very useful, and it's not just around uh, tracking the things we have to do, but also making it easier for someone else to take a look at our work when we're not available. You don't need someone to ping you and ask you about all the things that you did for anything in particular, because they can open up the Matrix, open up the task that you're working on, and see those records as needed. The notes section is where you can add subtasks, or you can create notes around the item. One of the cool things that we have is something called Fill with AI. And what that means is that, we, as a productivity company, we want to make it more productive for you, right? And so by using this Fill with AI, I'll show you how it works. If I click on this, what it's doing is that our system will actually go and generate notes for you. But let me give you a different example. Let's just say if one of my personal priorities is to create a marketing plan for Q3 2024. Okay. So imagine if I create a marketing, I want to create that task. What I can do is I can click Fill with AI, and Party Matrix will actually go take a look at your task and create a series of action items, but also some subtasks that you might have to work on automatically. And so instead of you having to type in all this notes, we leverage knowledge that we have to be able to create these subtasks for you. Now they're somewhat generic, but it will go and save you a bunch of time because it's a good starting point. So for everyone here who's relatively new to the AI space, this is one of those things where we think we can actually add more value to you over time, because we can actually learn and actually try to be more productive and more effective to help you create all the subtasks, but also all the high level tasks in order for you to meet your goals. So check out this Fill with AI feature. When you create something new, just click on that and our system will fill it out for you. The resources section is where you can attach files. Again, let's just say you have a task that you have to work on for a customer. You might have PowerPoints or documents or contracts. You can add all that, but you can also add links. So it might be to links to your SharePoints or your Drive or something like that. You can also attach URLs, so a website, a customer website, or you can attach emails. So this happens all the time. I get an email and I need to delegate that email to somebody. I can attach an email to a Matrix task. And then the other thing you can do too with Matrix is you can use it on your mobile device and you snap pictures. So if you are a team that actually has a lot of people out in the field, and as you're trying to do work and you want to take pictures associated with tasks, you can actually go into your Matrix on the mobile device, and there's an option to use their camera to take a picture and upload it directly into your Matrix. And again, it adds it all in one central place in the resources section, and everyone can be on the same page. Because someone else can go and review that as needed back at the office. So that's how an item details works. And the other thing I mentioned to you earlier is how Matrix is very flexible on a project level. So let me show you how it works if you want to create a new project. Simply go to project here and create a project. When you create a project, you have a couple of options. The first is a blank project, right? Very straightforward. You simply type in the name of a project. And then also you can choose what type of template. So the basic Party Matrix is that Eisenhower Matrix. But as you can see, I can actually choose other types of templates as well. So I can use the GTD method, which is the getting things done method, or SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunity, threats, or a couple of other basic templates. And I can choose a color coding. So for colors, it's just a way for you to visualize the type of project. So maybe, if you work across diverse teams, such as engineering, marketing, and so forth, in that case, you might have one color for all your marketing projects, one color for all your external projects, etc. So that's how you can create a blank project from scratch. But we also have several other options. The next one is public templates. So we at Affluence have created hundreds of different types of templates that you can use completely free. So when you go to public templates, you can choose from one of these templates that we've created, such as, the 30, 60, 90-day plan for managers. And what it's doing is it's actually changing the name of the quadrants. So then it uses a different dimension for you to track all these tasks. And again, it goes down to a 2x2 matrix, but there's many different dimensions you can use. Now, here's the cool part, which is you might also want to create your own templates. So as you use Protomatrix more, you might have repetitive workflow. As an example, if you're in HR, you might create a Protomatrix called employee onboarding, right? Maybe at your organization, you have 30 tasks that every new employee has to go through, including training or review documents, etc. You can create a Protomatrix, create those 30 tasks with all the due dates, all the links, etc., and then save it as a template. And when you do, when you have a new employee, instead of recreating all that from scratch, you can actually launch an employee onboarding template, and our system will automatically create all those tasks for you, and then also set all the due dates for you automatically. And then lastly, we have something called Create with AI. And again, this is one of those things that we're trying to do to make it more productive for you. Let's just say, you might want to get a promotion, right? Get a promotion this year, something like that. You can type that in here with your goal, click next, and Protomatrix will generate a series of tasks, prioritize them for you to help you achieve that particular goal. So this goal could be a personal goal. It could be a team goal, such as how to improve your operational efficiency or how to streamline your process or how to increase your sales lead, etc. So our AI system will help you make those various goals in order to fulfill your needs. But here's the cool part, which is it's not intended to be perfect. And that's one of those things where I always want to bring up, which is AI is one of those things where it's a hit or miss, right? And most of the time it's somewhere in between. So when you see the task that our system creates, you'll look at it and say, you know what, I like this, I don't like this, and you can pick and choose as needed. So when you today, after this call, I'd love for you to go and try out our project creation system, type in some goals, type in some of the things that you really care about, and see if there's some work there that that you could do to actually meet those goals. So that's how you create a project. But one other thing too is that when you click on a project for the first time, it opens what's called the project details. And in the project details, you can actually do a couple of things. One, you can invite team members. So of course, a personal project, maybe you only have yourself in it, but a team project, you might have your coworkers, and then you might have another project with different team members. So with Protomatrix, you have complete permission control on every single project. And so some projects might be associated with just a few people. Some project might be associated with the entire department, and you're able to manage that using a user group as well as a member control system. The quadrants are customizable. So again, the Eisenhower Matrix, do now, do later, delegate, and inbox may work for you as a start, but after a while, you may adapt it to however you think, right? However you think best. So instead of delegates, maybe you use this as a different quadrant and you're able to customize each of these things and then change the color as needed. And so that's how you create a project, and then you can start a project by clicking on the star right here, and it'll pop it to the top of your list. So when you use Protomatrix and for the first time, you have 5 or 10 projects, again, starring is not that helpful. But once you have more than that, starring is actually really nice because it's a way to stay organized. And so for me, again, I have 5 to 10 star project at any point in time. One thing I do want to show you real quick is how to think about Protomatrix from the perspective of project management or other ways of using the system. So of course, our quadrants is the key view in all the data that you have. But when sometimes you actually want to see the list view. So what you can do is when you click on this list view, it actually shows you all the tasks that you have, and then it actually allow you to sort by the name or by modified date, by due date. So I like to go to the list view when I need to find things that are overdue. When you have a lot of tasks that are overdue, it'll show up here and it'll be in red, and it's very visual, and it's a way for me to sort by due dates. The other thing you notice too is when I go to list view here, all my starred items are at the top, right? And so again, it's a very simple way for me to see what important tasks I have for every single matrix. And then I have the calendar view. Again, all my tasks with due dates will show up here in the calendar view. And of course, remember, all your most important tasks should have due dates on it. And I can click on the task. I can actually just drag and drop it to reprioritize and change to due dates. Very, very easy. But the other thing is all those changes are tracked as part of my record here in the item history. So again, if your coworker is changing the due dates on you, well, guess what? Protomatrix tracks that for you. So it's very, very helpful. And then you have the Gantt chart. So the Gantt chart is a way to see things that are much farther out. So the way I describe it is this, which is if you use the quadrant view to look at priorities, you look at the list view as a way just to look at everything across the big picture and be able to sort easily. You look at the calendar view to see the tasks that you have to do this week and this month, and then you use the Gantt chart view to see the things you have to do across 6 months or longer. So that's how you can think about the different views in Matrix, taking the same data and helping you visualize what you need to work on. And now on the left-hand side, you'll see that we have a couple of other options here. I won't go into it, but you can explore it as needed. But we have what's called the one-on-one view, which is what I call the people-centric view, where you can actually select a coworker, and Matrix will show you everything you have to do for that person. It is so powerful if you're a manager and you have 5 or 10 direct reports, and you're trying to be on top of all their tasks, and you're trying to see across all the different projects that they have. In the one central place, you can actually look up every single person that you work with and see all the tasks you have in common with them. So in common means either assigned to you or them, and you're a follower, right? And then not only that, you can actually create tasks directly from this view. It's very, very useful, especially if you manage people. And then we have global calendar, which allows you to see all your tasks across all your projects in the calendar. Global Gantt chart, see all your tasks across all your projects across 6 months or more. And now let me switch gear a little bit because I want to talk about email management real quick as we try to wrap this up. So Matrix, a lot of customers come to Matrix for email management. And so what you can do is if you use Outlook, we actually have one of the best Outlook integrations for email prioritization. So if you go to the App Store here, you can search for Matrix, turn email into task, and that's one of the extensions that we have for Outlook. And what happens is if you have an Outlook email and you want to make sure that you never drop this email, all you have to do is click on the extension, choose prioritize email, and what Matrix allows you to do is turn this email into a task. And so if you click on this capture email, it takes this email, convert it to a task, upload the email into Matrix, and it creates one central place for you to set priorities, reminders, and due dates. It uses the email subject as your item name, and then you can choose what project it goes in. So again, it is very, very useful and allows me to prioritize my emails. I can choose what quadrant it goes in, and then I can assign it to another person as well. So if you get that really important email from a customer and you need to assign to someone in another department or within your own department, that's all you got to do. And so now you set a due date, and now your email is prioritized. It has a due date attached to it. It has the quadrants attached to it, and it's put into the appropriate project. And that's all you have to do. Click capture email. And as you can see, after I click capture email, the item details opens up. It's exactly like inside Matrix. And I can go and set reminders as needed, or create subtasks as needed, or attach additional documents as needed. And the email itself is uploaded here into the resources section. And so my coworker can open up this email and respond to that email. Now, you might ask, what makes this better than forwarding an email? The problem when you forward an email to a coworker is that it's going to be in one of their emails, right? And so it could be one of those emails and they'll have 5 emails, receive 5 emails afterwards, and they may not see this forwarded email at all. And not only that, when you forward an email to somebody, you're not able to set due dates. You're not able to set reminders. You're not able to add additional context or have a meaningful discussion around that email. And so with Matrix, every email can be converted into a task, and you can have all this additional context. And again, being able to set priorities and due dates and reminders is just so powerful. Matrix also works completely inside Outlook. So if you go to the App Store here on the left-hand side, you again can add Matrix as an app, and within Outlook itself, you can access the entire Matrix. So I showed you the web application, but you have to go to our website. But guess what? If you use Outlook, you can access the entire application without even leaving Outlook. Similarly, you can do the same thing inside Microsoft Teams. So if you use Microsoft Teams, click on Apps here, search for Matrix, and when you do, you can install Matrix here, pin it on the left-hand side, and now you have the entire Matrix within Microsoft Teams and never have to leave the Microsoft Team app to access all your tasks. There's a couple of additional integrations that we do within Teams that makes us very unique. I can actually add the one-on-one view directly to every conversation I have with my coworker. So if you have a lot of team members and you're discussing all sorts of stuff all the time, all you have to do is click on this plus icon here, choose Matrix, and then from there, you just have to select the one-on-one view. And when you select the one-on-one view, it allows you to create these one-on-ones for every single chat you have. And then in a Teams channel, perhaps, you can actually add a project view. So let's just say if you have a marketing team. So imagine if you go to Teams here and you have a marketing team, what you can do is you can actually add the Matrix marketing project directly inside the Teams channel and allows you to access all the tasks that you have there. So Matrix is intended to be wherever it is that you spend your time. Everything that I showed you on the web app is available inside Teams, inside Outlook, inside native desktop apps. So we have Windows app, Mac app that you can install, as well as mobile apps on Android and iPhone. And you can also go to Prioritization.com from your mobile device and see everything that you have to see. So what that means is, being able to create a single source of truth with respect to priorities, but also being able to access it no matter where you are. And I'm going to wrap things up by showing you a couple of other things. We have a page called our commands explanation. So we explain to you the various commands that you have that you can type into the chat channel. And then also we have connectors. This is where you can actually sync Matrix with other software if you wanted to. And then of course we have Edge and Chrome extensions. So if you go to search for Matrix for Edge, you can install Matrix directly into your Edge here, your Edge browser, and you're able to convert any web page into a task. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my presentation here. I'm going to wrap things up. It's up to you. And now it's on you to, sign up for Matrix if you haven't already. And again, if you use Teams and Outlook, definitely install our application there. But if other than that, you should create at least 3 projects. I think you should have a personal priority project, because at the end of the day, I think, if each of you can prioritize your task and have a better clarity on what it is you need to work on, then everything else will fall into place. But then once you do that, create a project called Team Priorities and share that with your coworkers, have them be on the same page. And one of the challenges I've seen over and over again is that, coworkers might not understand why we're doing this. And, that's on you to explain to them, hey, all we're trying to do is be on the same page. I want you to work on the right things. And I want you to know what I'm working on. And that's how you pitch it to them. And that's why we have these intro webinars for folks who are completely new to Matrix and new to the prioritization system, because I want them to understand the exact same thing that I'm conveying to you today, which is Matrix is simply a communication tool to help everyone be aligned. And then the third project I would create is something like a key initiative that you may have. So for example, if you're the director of marketing, maybe one of those projects might be, how do we improve our marketing visibility, right, this quarter? Or if you're in HR, how do we improve our onboarding process? And so you might have one of those projects might be your own personal goals. Invite the appropriate team members and pitch to them on why it's important to focus on high impact tasks. And this is not a one-time effort, unfortunately. There's just many people out there who prefer to just work on things, but not think about whether or not they should work on it in the first place. And unfortunately, it's on us, the people who are delegating the task, the people who are in charge of projects, to ensure that everyone's on the same page and everyone is actually working on the right things. When you create items in Matrix, make sure you set those due dates and make sure you set those reminders. And remember what I told you, there's a few capabilities inside Matrix that you should always use. And the 2 most important ones are the due dates and the reminders. And then, of course, follow after that. It's assigning it to the appropriate person and then putting them in the appropriate quadrant, right? Once you do those things, that's all. That's everything you need to get 80% of the value in Matrix, because it's already ensuring that everyone's on the same page with respect to priorities. And then the last thing is to ruthlessly prioritize. When I say that, one of the things that I've seen people don't do a good enough job at is making sure that they have only a few things in quadrant one. We end up to having too many things in quadrant one and then too many things in quadrant two. And then once you are over allocated, you start losing track of things. And so just being able to ruthlessly prioritize and drop things is actually such an important skill. A couple of advice, if you're concerned around, tracking too many things, my advice is to track only high impact tasks first, right? I wouldn't put things into Matrix that would take 5 minutes to do. Honestly, if it takes you 5 minutes to do, you can just do it, or, write it down on something like that. So I generally don't use Matrix for tracking things like groceries, as an example, right? Instead, I use it to track things where I can make decisions on something, whether or not I have to decide if I have to do it or I shouldn't do it, or I need to delegate it, etc. Always think of Matrix as a communication tool. And that is why I recommend projecting Matrix on the big screen. I think if you just try that a few times, you'll see how you can actually have much more meaningful conversation. And then thirdly, use Matrix to manage your individual goals. I emphasize the individual goals aspect over and over again, because that's what Matrix started out as. It's a tool to help every single person just understand, what it is they need to work on. And then after that, then you can communicate that to your coworkers, and then ensuring that they understand what you're working on, right? And so if you're successful at the individual level, I think everything else will fall into place. And what success should look like on a personal level, you check Matrix every week and remind yourself of your goals. This is what I do. I always look at my goals to see whether or not I'm working towards my goals, and I constantly remind myself on that. And then using Matrix to track all your priorities. And so you should not be using another system that tracks some task and then use Matrix to track some other tasks. It's so much better to have one central place. And again, use the 4 quadrants to prioritize all of those goals. At the team level, everyone on the team should understand and be aligned on key tasks. So if there ever is a question, hey, what should we work on? They should be able to open up Matrix and look at the share team project, and from that, be able to understand, okay, this is where I should be spending my time. And then, of course, if you're using a lot of, if you have a lot of emails and you use Outlook, you can use Matrix to prioritize those emails, triage those emails, instead of just forwarding them, instead of flagging them, and you'll find that you'll have much better control on your emails as well. All right, so I'm open to Q&A. If there's any questions right now, you can share them in the chat. I'll take a look, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time. Okay, there's a couple of questions. Yeah, thanks for the feedback on the Fill with AI. I think it's one of those things where it's really neat. Like, you can actually use it to save you a lot of time and effort. This webinar is recorded, and so we'll share the recording with you and everyone else afterwards, and we'll post on our website as well. Where's the data and info stored? So we have several options in terms of our product offerings. So we have our standard software solution, and so those are on AWS. We have our government cloud solution that's on US government cloud, Azure. And then we have our HIPAA solution. And then also we have an enterprise solution where customers can actually choose exactly what data center they want their Matrix data to be stored. And then in terms of files, you can actually, for our business customers, they can choose to upload your Matrix documents and files attachments to your OneDrive, your Microsoft OneDrive, instead of our system. So those are various options. If you have more specific questions around that, please reach out to us. Is there templates for R&D manufacturing? So that's a fantastic question there. In fact, when you use your AI, just ask it. And so you can actually just type it in, and then the AI will generate some of those templates for you. Also, we have a web page that I can share where you can access more of our templates. We also have, I want to say 1,000 templates. Not all of them are published, but 1,000 templates on almost every single possible combinations of 2x2 matrix that you can think of, along with an explanation. And then the next question is history. The history of the projects and the items, they're actually stored indefinitely. So we have several different license tiers that determines how long the history of the items are tracked for. But in terms of the tasks themselves, they're there indefinitely for your project. So you can, when you're done with the project, you can actually archive a project, and then it goes away from your list. But then whenever you need to review it, you can actually open it back up again. And what's really neat is Party Matrix has a powerful tool for exporting your entire project as a CSV file. So while that doesn't include all the history, for some of our customers, they need that as part of a record. And then also there's a reporting system for all the project as well. So you can see everything from like burn down diagrams and so forth. But after a project is completed, you can simply mark it as done, which is archiving it, and then it goes away, and then you can open it up as needed. We do have discounts for nonprofits. Please reach out to us directly to helpdesk@affluence.com. So whatever details you can provide there, but we do have discount for nonprofit, yes. Do you have to be a follower to view template task? So within a project itself, there's several types of permissions. So the way it works with permissions is the following. One, you have a project and you can determine who can be within that project. And if you add a coworker to that project, they have full access to everything within that project. So what that means is they don't have to be a follower of a task to see those tasks as long as they're added to the project. But you can also assign a task to a coworker who's not in a project. So let me give you an example. Maybe you have a project that you want to keep private, but you might want to assign a task to someone outside the project. In that case, what happens is they'll get to see only that task, and they only get to see that task inside their inbox. So there's something called the inbox, which I'll show you right here. So in the inbox within Party Matrix, there's something called inbox right here. And the way it works with the inbox is these are items that don't belong in any specific projects. So I use my inbox as a place where I forward my emails to start. So for example, I get an email when I'm on the out and about, and I see my email on my phone. I can forward it to my secret inbox, and it creates a task here. But likewise, if a coworker assigns me a task that I don't have access to, the project that I don't have access to, then it'll show up here in my inbox. And so the coworker can see that here. You can also create read-only version for every single one of your projects. So if you go to here, you can actually share the project in read-only mode. And so you're able to share an entire project with somebody without them having access to and be able to edit the project. And then similarly, inside Microsoft Teams, you can also add the read-only projects. If you have any more specific questions on that, please feel free to reach out to us. So in terms of GPDR, we have our GPDR guidelines, and also for our enterprise customers, you can actually deploy our solution in Europe. So if you have any questions around that, please reach out to us. The question around how it works with Office 365. So the way it works with Office 365 is if you have Microsoft Teams, for example, all you have to do is click on this apps here, and you can add Party Matrix directly from here. And so you just have to install Party Matrix for Teams, and then inside Outlook, you install Party Matrix for Outlook by going to the, if you select an email, and then you click on this right here, you can install Party Matrix for Outlook. And then with the other integrations that we have, including Graph, Planner, and all that, you just have to add each of those individually. We also have integrations with Power Automate, and then also integration with Microsoft Copilot, which is another thing that you have to add on. So that's how it works within the Office ecosystem. In fact, we also have integrations with Microsoft Office. So not just Outlook and Teams. So if you are an enterprise organization, we actually have some of those deployments that's really neat. It's just a way to have Party Matrix be accessible everywhere within Office. The next question around how does this compare with something like Microsoft Task? It's actually really, really interesting. What happens is that at the end of the day, Party Matrix is about prioritization, right? You can go and you can actually use a task list for anything. I mean, like me personally, I have a piece of paper and actually I have a notebook and I write down my tasks there too. The problem with any task list is it's a list. And that's the challenge for every single one of us. It's about understanding where it is that we need to spend our time and how do we communicate our priorities to everybody else. And that's what makes Party Matrix special, is that focus on prioritization. The second aspect of it is that this email prioritization actually doesn't exist within the Microsoft ecosystem itself. So within Microsoft Outlook, you can flag an email, you can set reminders and so forth, but you're not able to take that email, assign to coworkers, set a due date, set a reminder, and then be able to put it within a specific project and within a specific quadrant. So no matter what you try to do with any of the other task list system, it doesn't do a good job of actually putting it into one central place so that you understand the priorities of everything involved. So we've had so many customers that realize there's a major difference. I think it's a small step in terms of visualizing your priorities, but at the same time, being able to prioritize those tasks makes such a huge difference. Let's see here. So the question I see here is around workflows. So if you can explain a little bit more about workflow, I'd be happy to address it. But also, actually, in the context of time, just the webinar might end real soon, so I might not be able to answer it. You can reach out to us, helpdesk@affluence.com, or my email, hi@affluence.com, with your workflow needs, and I'd be happy to explain it. But we have integrations with Power Automate here, for example, that allows you to actually create workflow automations. So what that means is that you can create a rule like, a customer might send a message, submit a form in Microsoft Form, and it creates a task in Priority Matrix. If you also go into Microsoft Teams here, if you go to workflows, you can actually also search for Priority Matrix. And if you search for Priority Matrix and workflow here, I'll show you how it looks. You can see that we actually have multiple workflows already integrated within the Microsoft ecosystem as well. So I think that's actually, hopefully that answered your question. But these are the basic one that comes preloaded. And then for our enterprise customers, you can actually set up whatever it is that you need, or we help you set up whatever it is that you need if there's something that's much more specific. The other question is around Outlook. Let's see here. So the way it works with Outlook is once you prioritize a task, the way earlier I prioritized a task, I think I put it right here. This was a task that I prioritized just earlier in the presentation from Outlook. As you can see, the task gets created, it's delegated to a person, it got a due date, and then now my coworker can take a look at this email and respond to it. And if they go to resources, the email file is actually uploaded right there. And so that's a place where they can actually click on that email file, open the email, and respond to the customer as needed. And then they can go back in here and just respond to this. If you just flag an email in Outlook, it doesn't do anything with Priority Matrix. But if you prioritize an email with Priority Matrix, then in Outlook, you'll see this little tag right here. It'll say Priority Matrix, right? So it's very easy for you to see that this email has already been prioritized. But not only that, our system will automatically determine that this task has already been created. And so then you don't create a duplicate task. But one last feature within Outlook that is unique to Priority Matrix, and I haven't seen in any other application, is the ability to attach an email to an existing task. So what that means is you might have multiple emails from an existing client, and that's all related to one task. You can actually open up Priority Matrix here and attach the email to an existing task. So now you can have a task where you have all the documents that's relevant to everything that you have for a particular customer in one central place. So that means you can attach the web page, you can attach PowerPoint, you can attach Word document, you can attach emails, you can link the task, you can create dependencies and so forth. So that's how it works inside Priority Matrix. All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for all the questions today. This is actually really great. I love all the questions. Please feel free to reach out to us with any other feedback. I'm always listening. And if there's anything else you want me to cover in other webinars, I'd be happy to listen to that too. And also, we do provide these webinar recordings in other languages. So we do translate to other languages. So if your organization requires specific languages, please reach out to us. Thank you all. Appreciate your time.